bright studio lights shimmered across the smiling faces of two families as the music of Family Feud thundered through the Atlanta studio. To the audience, it was just another cheerful Thursday taping. Laughter, applause, and quick-fire questions filling the air. But for one woman standing quietly at the end of the Parker family lineup, this wasn't just a game show. For her, it was a crossroad between life and fear. Her name was Diana Thompson, and every second under those lights felt like a heartbeat counting down. Cameras were rolling, laughter echoed, and yet her palms were slick with sweat, her chest tightening with every breath. To anyone watching, she was just another contestant. But inside, she was hiding a truth so dangerous that one wrong word could shatter everything she'd carefully concealed. Only her sister, Lauren, standing beside her, knew the full story. The real reason Diana's husband could never find out where she was, because if he did, he wouldn't stop at anger. He'd come for her. For 12 long years, Diana had lived under the thumb of Marcus Thompson, a man the world saw as charming, the kind who smiled in church pews and shook neighbors' hands, but who, behind closed doors, stripped her of everything that made her human. It started small, as it often does. A suggestion here, a little checking there. Text me when you get there. I just want to make sure you're safe. But safety slowly turned into surveillance. Love blurred into control. Soon, Diana couldn't step out of the house without permission. Every text, every call, every receipt. Marcus monitored it all. Her laughter became a whisper. Her friendships faded like old photographs. And so, for years, Diana lived like a shadow. Silent, obedient, and afraid. Until one quiet evening, her sister called. Lauren's voice trembled with hope. Di, I got us on Family Feud. Steve Harvey, the stage, the lights. Can you imagine? You have to come with us. Diana's first instinct was terror. I can't. You know I can't. Marcus would never. Then don't tell him, Lauren interrupted softly. Just this once, Di. Do something for you. Those words hit like lightning. For you. When was the last time someone said that to her? When was the last time she made a decision that wasn't dictated by fear? Diana sat there, phone trembling in her hand, staring into the mirror. The reflection looking back wasn't the girl she once was. It was a woman she barely recognized, one who had forgotten the sound of her own laughter. That night, while Marcus slept, Diana made a plan with Lauren. They whispered across estates, mapping out every detail. The timing, the cover story, the travel route. She would tell Marcus she was visiting her sister in Florida. In reality, she'd fly to Atlanta under a different name, using cash Lauren wired to her through a friend. They even bought a burner phone, hidden beneath the lining of Diana's purse. It was risky, terrifying, but for the first time in years, Diana felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. The morning of the trip, she woke before dawn. She watched Marcus sleeping, peaceful, unaware, and for a fleeting second, guilt stabbed through her chest. But then she remembered the nights he'd locked her in, the days he'd taken her phone, the words he'd thrown like knives. She pressed a shaking hand against her suitcase and whispered, "Just this once." By the time Marcus stirred, Diana was already on the highway. Her heart raced with every passing mile. She had 12 hours before he'd start checking in, 12 hours to remember who she was, 12 hours to stand in the light. When the plane landed in Atlanta, Lauren was waiting, her arms wide, her eyes wet with joy. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." They laughed, cried, and rehearsed their introductions late into the night. For once, Diana wasn't someone's property. She was a sister, a woman, a name on a team. But as they walked into the studio the next morning, reality returned. The cameras, the crowd, the questions, all of it felt like a test. Her secret was fragile. One wrong answer, one curious question. And Marcus would know. The game began. Steve Harvey greeted the audience with his usual warmth and humor, his deep voice rolling across the stage. The Parker family was introduced one by one. Laughter, cheers, quick banter. Then Steve's eyes landed on Diana. "All right, Diana," he smiled. "Tell me about yourself. Married? Kids?" Her smile faltered. For a split second, her throat tightened. She could feel Lauren's hand brush hers in silent support. I, yes, I'm married, she stammered. Steve grinned, unaware. And what does your husband think about you being on Family Feud? Silence. Diana froze. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She could feel the air drain from the room. Her lips trembled. But no sound came out. The laughter faded. Steve's eyes narrowed, sensing something deeper. And that was the moment, under the brightest lights of her life, when Diana realized the truth. She wasn't afraid of losing the game. She was afraid of being found. The studio had fallen utterly silent. What had been a stage filled with laughter seconds ago now felt like a room without air. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every twitch of Diana's trembling hands, every flicker of panic in her eyes. Steve Harvey, who'd hosted thousands of families over the years, had seen contestants stumble, freeze, even cry. But this was different. There was something in Diana's silence that felt like a scream no one else could hear. Steve tilted his head slightly, lowering his microphone. "You okay, Diana?" he asked gently, his usual booming voice softening to a human tone. Lauren's hand pressed against her sister's back, whispering something only she could hear. But Diana wasn't listening. In her mind, she could hear Marcus's voice, sharp, cold, echoing in her skull. "Don't embarrass me. Don't you ever make me look weak." Her breathing quickened. The lights felt hotter. The floor seemed to tilt. Steve took a step closer. "You don't have to be nervous," he said. "It's just us here. What's wrong?" And then, like a thread snapping, Diana's composure gave way. Her lips parted. Her voice came out so faint that the microphone almost missed it. "My husband doesn't know I'm here." It was a whisper, but in the silence it sounded like thunder. Steve blinked. The audience shifted uneasily. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. But Steve didn't. He saw her eyes, wide, terrified, pleading. This wasn't a punchline. This was a cry for help. "What do you mean?" he asked, gently but firmly. "He doesn't know you're here?" Diana swallowed hard. Every muscle in her body screamed to stop talking, but the words kept pouring out, like a dam breaking after years of pressure. He thinks I'm in Florida, visiting my sister." Her eyes flickered toward Lauren, who now had tears forming. "He doesn't know I came here. He doesn't even know I'm on this show. If he finds out—" She stopped, choking on the next breath. "I don't know what he'll do." The crowd fell utterly silent again. The laughter track died in the control room. Steve slowly lowered his microphone. He'd handled drama before, wild contestants, emotional stories, but never something that carried this kind of weight. He crouched down a little, lowering himself to her level. "Diana," he said softly, "why are you afraid of him finding out? Has he hurt you?" Diana shook her head quickly, the automatic denial of someone conditioned by years of fear. No, he's never hit me," she said. But then her voice broke. "He just controls everything. My phone, my bank card, who I see, what I wear. He makes me check in every hour, and if I don't, he—" Her voice trailed off, but her trembling told the rest. Lauren stepped forward, wrapping an arm around her. "She's been living like this for years," Lauren said softly. "This is the first time she's done something for herself. She just wanted one day. Just one." Steve turned toward the camera crew, his face grave. "Cut the recording," he said quietly. The red lights on the cameras blinked off. He turned back to Diana. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady but filled with compassion. "What you're describing, that's not love. That's control, and it's not okay." Diana looked up at him, confused, almost guilty. "But he says he's just protecting me," she murmured. "He says the world's dangerous, that people might take advantage of me, that I need him." Steve shook his head. "Real love doesn't trap you, baby. It doesn't track you. It doesn't make you afraid to breathe." He looked around at the stunned audience. "We're going to pause this show for a moment," he said. "This woman needs help, not applause." For a few heartbeats, nobody moved. Then a woman in the front row stood, clapping slowly, and others followed. The sound built, not laughter this time, but something solemn and supportive. It wasn't entertainment anymore. It was witness. As stagehands ushered the families backstage, Steve guided Diana off the stage. In the green room, she sat on a couch, shaking, while producers whispered urgently into headsets. Someone brought her water, another fetched tissues. Lauren sat beside her, holding her hand tight. "I didn't mean to say it," Diana whispered. "It just came out." "That's because it needed to," Lauren said softly. Steve entered the room again, without the cameras, without the showman's smile, just a man trying to help. "Diana," he said gently, sitting across from her, "you don't have to go back there. You don't have to live like that anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. "But I have nowhere else to go." Lauren squeezed her hand. "You have me." And for the first time in years, Diana felt something shift, a small, flickering light inside her chest. Hope. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if Marcus had already noticed her absence. But one thing was clear. The secret she had guarded for 12 years was finally out. And though fear still gripped her heart, another truth was rising, one even stronger. She wasn't alone anymore. For a long while, the room was silent, except for the faint hum of air conditioning and the muffled voices of producers beyond the door. Diana sat hunched forward, elbows on her knees, fingers laced together as if holding herself from falling apart. Her confession hung in the air, raw and irreversible. Every instinct screamed that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life, that Marcus would find out, that he would punish her, that she would lose everything. But beneath that fear, something small and stubborn whispered back, "You told the truth." Steve Harvey returned a few minutes later, not with cameras or cue cards, but with a quiet calm that seemed to fill the room. He sat across from Diana again, his usual stage charisma replaced by something gentler, a fatherly steadiness. "Diana," he began softly, "I've been doing this show for a long time. But sometimes life steps on stage and tells us what really matters. You did something brave today." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't supposed to say anything." "Yeah," Steve nodded, "but maybe it was time someone heard you." Lauren squeezed her sister's hand again. "We're here, Di. We'll figure it out." The door opened and one of the producers stepped inside. Her face was serious but kind. "Steve," she said quietly, "we've reached out to a domestic violence advocate nearby. She's on her way to the studio. She can help with a safety plan." Diana's stomach twisted. "A safety plan?" she repeated, voice trembling. "No, I can't. I just need to get home before Marcus." Steve leaned forward. "Listen to me. You said he tracks your phone, your money, your movements. If you go home right now, he'll know something's off. You might not get another chance to reach out." Diana shook her head, tears spilling. "You don't understand. He'll be furious if I don't answer his call tonight. He'll think I'm lying. He'll—" "Diana," Steve interrupted softly but firmly. "You said you didn't know what he'd do if he found out. That's not love. That's control. Nobody who loves you should make you afraid of going home." The word home caught in her chest. That house, the walls she once decorated, the kitchen she kept spotless, the door she once believed protected her, now felt like a cage waiting to close again. Minutes passed before the door opened once more. A woman in her 40s entered, carrying a folder and wearing a badge clipped to her blouse. Her name was Alicia, and she introduced herself with the calm authority of someone who had walked into hundreds of rooms like this before. "Diana," she said gently, taking a seat beside her, "I'm here to help you stay safe. I know this feels sudden, but you're not alone in this. There are ways out that don't involve going back tonight." Diana stared at the folder in Alicia's hands, a folder full of strangers' stories that had started just like hers. "What about my things, my clothes, my photos? We can help you recover them later. Once you're safe," Alicia assured her. "Right now, the goal is to make sure he can't reach you." Lauren's eyes glistened. "You'll come home with me. I have space. You can stay as long as you need." But Diana hesitated. Her life, for all its pain, was still tied to Marcus. The bank accounts were in his name, the car title, the house, everything. Leaving him meant stepping into nothingness. "How will I live?" she whispered. Alicia placed a hand over hers. "One step at a time. There are programs to help. Temporary housing, legal support, counseling. You don't have to figure it all out today." Steve stood up slowly, rubbing his chin, visibly moved. "You see, I've hosted a lot of games, he said, voice low. But this right here, this ain't no game. This is a woman's life. He turned to the producer. We're not airing a second of this until she's safe. I want her location kept private, no footage leaked. Understood? The producer nodded. Diana looked up, startled. You don't have to. Yes, I do, Steve said. You came here looking for joy, and the least we can do is make sure you leave with safety. Outside the door, the show's music resumed faintly. A reminder that somewhere beyond these walls, people were still laughing, clapping, playing a game. But in this small room, the stakes were infinitely higher. Lauren wiped her eyes. Die, she said softly. You've spent 12 years surviving. Don't you think it's time to start living? The words sank deep, stirring something fierce and aching inside Diana. For 12 years, every choice she made was to avoid punishment. Every breath was measured. Every smile was borrowed. But now, for the first time, she wasn't being told what to do. She was being asked what she wanted. Her gaze lifted slowly to meet Steve's, then Lauren's, then Alicia's. Her voice quivered, but there was steel beneath it. I don't want to go back. Lauren broke into tears, pulling her sister into her arms. Steve closed his eyes, nodding in silent relief. Alicia opened her folder. Then let's start right here. We'll make a plan together. And as the door closed behind them, Diana Thompson, the woman who had come to Atlanta for a single day of laughter, began her first day of freedom. The next morning, when the sun spilled through the small guest room window of Lauren's house, Diana woke to a quiet she didn't recognize. No footsteps pacing the hallway, no phone vibrating with demands, no voice shouting her name from another room. For a few seconds, she didn't move, afraid that if she breathed too loudly, the dream would shatter and Marcus's voice would drag her back. But the silence stayed, and in that stillness, she realized something extraordinary. For the first time in 12 years, she was free. Her sister was waiting in the kitchen with coffee already poured, her eyes swollen from the night before, but her smile warm. You slept, Lauren whispered, as if afraid to break the fragile peace. Diana nodded. It felt strange, her body, her choices, her mourning, all her own. But beneath that fragile relief, there was a heavy ache. Freedom, she learned, came with its own kind of weight. In the days that followed, the world she'd known began to unravel. Marcus's calls turned from confusion to fury. When she didn't answer, he left messages that started with pleading, "Just tell me where you are," and ended in venom. "You'll regret this, Diana. You think you can just walk out?" But thanks to the advocates Steve's team had connected her with, she never heard those words directly. Alicia's team handled the contact, the paperwork, the police report. Each step was terrifying, but each one was a small rebellion against 12 years of silence. When Marcus finally realized she wasn't coming back, he turned to threats. Lawyers, property claims, accusations. But Diana had allies now. Legal aid helped her file for a protective order. The show's production team covered part of her temporary housing. Steve personally called to check in twice during those early weeks. He didn't speak as a celebrity then, but as a man who understood that sometimes compassion is the only thing strong enough to rewrite a life. The divorce took 6 months. They were hard months. Court hearings, statements, panic attacks when unfamiliar numbers called her phone. Yet with every passing week, Diana grew steadier. She took counseling sessions, found a small apartment near Lauren, and started volunteering with the same advocacy network that had helped her escape. In time, that volunteer work turned into a part-time job. She was no longer a secret kept in someone else's story. She was becoming her own. Then one day, almost 9 months after that unforgettable taping, Lauren came home holding an envelope from the network. And inside was a letter and a release date. Family Feud, episode 1843. The Parker family versus the Stevens family. Air date, May 17th. For a long time, Diana stared at it, her stomach twisted with both pride and dread. That episode, her confession, her trembling voice, the moment she broke, it would soon be seen by millions. "What if Marcus sees it?" she whispered. "He can't hurt you anymore," Lauren said softly. "And maybe someone who's still trapped will see it and realize they can leave too." On the evening the episode aired, Diana didn't watch it live. She couldn't, not yet, but messages began pouring in within hours. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years reached out with shock, with tears, with gratitude. Advocacy centers reported a surge in hotline calls. The network had added a message before the credits. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, help is available. That night, dozens of women found the courage to dial those numbers. When Diana finally watched the episode a week later, she didn't see a broken woman anymore. She saw a version of herself she hadn't met in years. Frightened, yes, but braver than she knew. The moment she whispered, "My husband doesn't know I'm here," no longer felt like shame. It felt like a door opening. Months passed. The story spread beyond the show. News outlets picked it up. Advocacy groups shared it at conferences. Even Steve spoke publicly about that day. "Sometimes entertainment has to stop so humanity can start," he said during one interview. Diana reminded us of that. 1 year later, on the anniversary of that taping, Diana stood outside a women's shelter holding a small box of donated items. Toiletries, books, and handwritten notes from survivors. Inside, women were laughing softly, their children playing nearby. The air smelled of coffee and hope. A young woman approached her shyly, holding the door. "Are you the lady from that episode?" she asked. "The one who said no?" Diana smiled gently. "Yes, that was me." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You helped me leave." And just like that, all the fear, all the nights spent trembling, all the years she'd lost. They found purpose. The pain had been real, but so was the strength that came from surviving it. That night, as she walked home beneath the city lights, Diana thought about the woman she used to be. The one who couldn't laugh without permission, who apologized for existing. And she whispered into the quiet air, "You made it." Because sometimes courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it trembles. Sometimes it cries. Sometimes it stands on a game show stage and tells the truth. And in doing so, it saves a life, and maybe a few more.